Carla Schurman's story, A New Home for Hiacynth. Good day. It is Glenda with AKA GK Fralin on your YouTube channels. And today I have something that is going to really, it's so endeared itself to me, and I just can't, I just hope it does to you. It warms my little old heart. Look behind me. That's not it, no. My pictures are straight. I straightened them up just before I turned this on. Now let's see how long it lasts. Okay. You know, silliness on the web is great because you can get by with it. So, I mean, all kinds of people are silly on the web. A few days or a week or so ago, I asked what I did was instead of giving element types that I wanted them to name for me to make a story out of, I named things for, you know, anybody who watched, who wanted to make a story out of. And the items were 5 elephants, Elm Street, and Jason. And they could do anything they wanted with it. Now, I have one back. I'm hoping I can get it all in one night, but I kind of doubt it. So if I'm wearing these same clothes tomorrow night, or the same shirt, you will know why I'm so full of why I'm so heart-filled. Okay, that was bad, but anyway. I am going to read Carla Schurman's story, A New Home for Hiacynth. Just outside of a small Kansas town, at the very end of Elm Street, lived a family of 5 female Asian elephants. The family matriarch, Hiacynth, had just celebrated her 71st birthday. Her sister, Petunia, had made the loveliest zucchini cake decorated with watercress, roses, and artichoke hearts. Hiacynth's favorite. Hiacynth's daughter, Violet, her granddaughter, Peony, and her great-granddaughter, Amaryllis, had decorated the veranda with arbors of Hiacynth's favorite flowers. It had all pleased Hiacynth to the tip of her trunk. The only sour note was the sneaky lurking of the family gardener, Jason. A most unpleasant individual in Hiacynth's point of view. However, I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand the situation, we must explore the history of this remarkable family. Years ago in Thailand, when Hiacynth was just 15 and Petunia a baby of 5, they had lost their mother and aunties to greedy poachers. Fortunately, the youngsters, a group of wildlife conservationists from America, were in the area attending a conference to discuss measures to preserve the future of Asian elephants, like Hiacynth and Petunia. They offered sanctuary for the 2 surviving members of the herd. At first, the trip to America was a little scary, especially walking up the ship's ramp. But they had a reassuring companionship of Professor Doolittle, their sponsor. Though Petunia did get a little seasick at first, The voyage was spent comfortably learning a new language and customs. It was during this time that they sampled and chose their American names. You see, Professor Doolittle was an avid gardener, so the names he suggested were flowers. Since both of the girls quite liked flowers too, it pleased everyone. Thus, it was that a Hyacinth and Petunia arrived in their new home. The good professor escorted them to an animal park in Kansas near his home. The park had beautiful forests and plains and a lovely river running through it. And to their pleasure, it had other wildlife from Thailand. Life was pleasant for the family group, and the family grew. You may wonder why there are no daddy elephants in the family group. Bull elephants do not stay with the family. It is just their way. So for many years, the family lived in harmony at the park. They made many new friends, animal and human. Professor Doolittle visited almost every day when he was home. He was still traveling all over the world, helping to preserve endangered animals. The professor was one of the few people who understood Hiacynth and her family. He had also come to understand how very intelligent and self-sufficient they were. It was then that he began to make plans. One frightening day in the month of June, the sirens began to blast. Tornado! Hiacynth quickly moved her family and those animals who would follow her guidance into a low-lying gully the river had carved through the rocky hills. It was a windy gully, which meant there was no straight path for a tornado to follow. Some of the smaller animals took cover in their caves, along the way, or under the elephants. Meanwhile, the park caretakers were running to get as many animals to safety as possible. The storm roared into the park with terrifying fierceness. Later, it was learned that it had registered an F4 by meteorologists, the people who know about these things. Hyacinth's family turned their lowered heads in the middle of the protective circle in which stood the shivering peony, Hyacinth's granddaughter. Truth be told, there were also several mothers and their babies huddled in the middle, including a mongoose. Hiacynth and her group survived unharmed, as did most of the residents of the park. The barns and other buildings did not. So vast was the destruction, it was decided that the animals would have to be moved to other facilities until reconstruction was completed. They could not all go to the same place, but an effort would be made to keep the families together. Hiacynth became very upset with worrying about the future. She did not have to worry long. The very next day, while Hiacynth and Petunia were helping to clear some of the heavy storm damage, Professor Doolittle returned from his trip and immediately rushed to the park. After speaking a long time with the park manager, he called Hiacynth and her sister aside for a conference. Professor Doolittle explained that he had been planning a home for them on property next to his home. Although it wasn't quite ready, would be soon. So if Hiacynth, her family, and those animals who chose to join them didn't mind roughing it for a couple of months, they could go there as soon as transportation was arranged. Hyacinth laughed. Mine, she said. Of course not. We'll be just fine. What a relief that we will not have to worry about being separated. Petunia, who was a little less able to communicate with the professor, trumpeted her joy. So it was that Hyacinth, her family, and most of the animals from the compound arrived at their new home. On the day of the move, one of the employees of the park asked Professor Doolittle for a job at the new location. The professor thought of the advantages of having a human to handle deliveries, etc., and to do what might be difficult for elephants' trunks. He hired Jason as groundskeeper. Okay, we are at the midpoint of that story, and Jason, who later becomes a problem, has just been hired. They've just moved into their new home, although not finished, and so now tomorrow night, or tomorrow, we will get to see what happens with the rest of the story. Carla did a fabulous job, and I have to applaud her, Carla, and I think everybody owes her some applause. This is not a job for me. This is fun, but we have a new writer in this group, and a good one at that. Anyway, so tomorrow is another day, and the rest of the story. So I hope everybody is having a great time, happy, staying out of the heat if they can, and drinking plenty of fluids if you can't, if you have to be out there, or have to be in one of those really hot places. Please drink a lot of fluids and build those electrolytes. Have some salt around, or an electrolyte drink. But that's just my advice of the day, like it or not. And tomorrow, again, is another day. And so I love you all. I care. And you know I care. So, hasta mañana.